Good afternoon. My name is Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg with the law firm of Murray Osorio. This afternoon we were back in front of Judge Zinnes on remand from the United States Supreme Court, which last night issued a unanimous 9-0 decision affirming the order of the district judge that they need to facilitate the return of Kilmar Armando Garcia to the United States and give him all of the due process that he should have had before he was illegally deported, and that they need to do that as quickly as possible, and that they need to share with the court information about what they're doing. After the Supreme Court issued that order, the district judge issued a further order clarifying her ruling and explaining that the government needs to take all steps reasonable to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States, and that in the meanwhile, it needs to provide the court with information, specifically 3 pieces of information. 1, where is Mr. Abrego Garcia right now? What is his custodial status? 2, what has the government done so far to try to bring him back? There were several days when the court's order was in effect prior to the Supreme Court entering a stay, and now it's been more than 12 hours since the Supreme Court lifted the stay. What has the government done during that time to bring him back? And then 3, what is the government planning to do to carry out the court's order, which is, again, to take all reasonable steps to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States as quickly as possible. The government refused to provide any of those pieces of information that the judge ordered them to provide. Not only the information about what future steps they're planning to take, they even refused to answer the question about what they've done so far, and they even refused to answer the question about where Kilmar Armando Garcia is today. For the second time in this case, they sent a lawyer into court who had no answers. He explained that his clients, the government, have chosen not to give him any information, not to give him any evidence. And the district judge, appropriately, was not willing to accept their vague and unsubstantiated assertions that, don't worry, Judge, we'll take care of this all in due course. The government attorney did say that they intend to comply with the order and bring him back. That's the bare minimum. They should have done that already. They've had plenty of time between the Supreme Court's order early yesterday evening and now. He should be here in the United States. It's a 5-hour flight.
Yes. Yes.
So the judge ordered that they provide detailed status updates on a daily basis, including as soon as tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. She's going to give our legal team the opportunity to respond to each one of those. We are also, as plaintiff's counsel, we are not going to accept the government's generic and unsubstantiated assertions that they're working on this, that they're considering it, that they're debating it, that they're taking steps. We are also going to be insisting that they provide specific concrete details to the court, as well as specific names of specific individuals who actually know what is going on, instead of declarations or pleadings signed by lawyers who then come into court and say, I actually have no personal knowledge. And then we'll be back in court on Wednesday.
Simon, what power does this judge have if, in fact, she doesn't get satisfactory answers from the government?
The judge has considerable power to enforce her orders.
What can she do?
We are going to trust that after today's very strong words from the judge, the government is going to provide a meaningful and detailed status update tomorrow, Saturday. But if they don't, we'll respond and we'll tell the judge, what relief we think she should order.
Do you believe when they say the U.S. government, you don't need to look at me that way, the U.S. government will comply with the order of the Supreme Court? How do you take that statement?
The judge has, I'm grateful I should need to be grateful that they're going to comply with an order of the United States Supreme Court. But we are grateful at the very least that they acknowledge that they're going to comply with the order of the United States Supreme Court. The judge is very appropriately requiring them to provide daily updates about the steps that they're taking in order to do that. And if those updates are either A, not sufficiently detailed, or B, reflect that they're not moving with all due haste, we are going to be back in front of the judge requesting relief.
What did you think of their disagreement with her about what the Supreme Court had actually ordered?
I think the judge sort of appropriately shut that down very quickly by saying that the Supreme Court affirmed her order, asked for clarification on one verb, and she provided that clarification in her subsequent order yesterday evening.
Sir, I'd like to know, how concerned are you that you've not been able to talk to your client, and what relief will you seek if you don't get the answers that you seek?
I can't get into details about what relief we're going to be seeking. It really does depend on what the government comes up with in their next filing. What I can say is that we're not going to be sitting back and sort of waiting to see what they have to say on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. If they don't take this order, if they don't take today's order seriously, we'll respond seriously.
Why not ask for the court to immediately send Mr. Abrego Garcia back? Because this could potentially push things off all the way until next week.
The court already ordered that last night. Last night, the court ordered the government to take all reasonable steps to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia. So I didn't need to come into court today and ask the judge to order again what she already ordered last night. Now the question is, how are we going to know if the government is actually doing that? And that's what the judge put some very, very, very fine point on today.
Simon, you've had cases where you said that ICE has actually gone and bent over backwards to bring people back who were deported illegally. How quickly were those cases carried out? Anything close to what's happening here?
Yeah, there's no reason that this case needed to become a national issue. There's no reason that this case needed to go to the United States Supreme Court. And it's been the government that's done that at every step of the way. It's been the government that turned this into a national issue. It was the government who appealed the judge's original, very reasonable and modest order all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And now it's the government who is coming into court saying, yes, Judge, we blew off your first deadline. We haven't yet taken any steps, or we're not prepared to show you what steps we've taken to comply with your order. Wrongful deportations happen from time to time. And when the government realizes that they've done that, they facilitate the return. They have a policy about it. Courts have ordered it all up and down the United States. For years, we provided several examples in our briefing, and the Supreme Court didn't have any issue whatsoever. 9-0 unanimously agreed that the district judge's order that they facilitate his return was absolutely proper, is in effect today, right now. There was one verb that they weren't sure what it meant. They asked her to clarify it, and she did.
And to be clear, you have...
The family has requested just an update on how Kilmar is doing. They weren't even able to provide that today. Your response to it?
Yeah, that was the most shocking thing of all, that the attorney for the government wasn't even prepared to answer the question, where is Kilmar Abrego today and what is his custodial status? I was very dismayed and disheartened by the fact that they wouldn't answer such a straightforward question.
And your position is you know nothing about his current state?
No, neither we nor the family have been able to make any contact with him. This is one of the principal human rights violations that occurs in that facility, is that inmates and detainees in that facility are held incommunicado.
Simon, how disappointing it is that the government is pushing back and fighting this effort that you guys are trying to bring him back to the country?
I had really hoped that after a 9-0 loss at the United States Supreme Court, they would essentially say, all right, we get it, and start acting in good faith. I do have hope that now that they've seen that the district judge is not going to be taking this lightly, that they will start acting in good faith, and that we're actually going to see a meaningful status report tomorrow that's going to detail meaningful activity taking place. But of course, if they don't, we'll be prepared to respond.
Attorney, what if President Bukele says that there are charges against him in Salvador? Would that mean that he wouldn't need to come back?
I think it's preposterous that there be charges against him in El Salvador. He hasn't been in that country since the age of 16, about a decade ago.
But in your SIR reply, you said that you noted that the Solicitor General was claiming that there may be reasons for El Salvador to hold him.
The Solicitor General, in their last brief to the United States Supreme Court, sort of made a vague, kind of waved their hands at, well, we might have some information that El Salvador might have some reason that they want to hold him. What we responded is, essentially in keeping with what the judge said at the very start of the first hearing in this case last week. She started the first hearing in this case by saying, I'm going to decide this case based on the evidence in the record. And there's no evidence in the record of any criminality, gang ties, any of that stuff. I mean, at this point, I have to assume that if they had any of that evidence, they would have filed it. And that's essentially what the judge said today. Again, she reiterated, I'm going to assume, based on the fact that you haven't filed any evidence, that you have no evidence.